Hello and welcome back to the Single Malt Frontier, where we explore the edge of innovation in American single malt whiskey. Here on the show, we do a little bit of tasting and a lot of talking. Usually we talk about whiskey, but the best thing about whiskey is the conversations we get to have along the way, and we get to talking about a little bit of everything. So today, our guest is Nora Ganley-Roper, the blender for Lost Lantern whiskey. We've been talking a lot about Lost Lantern recently, and this is actually the second in a series because we had all of the single casks from the Scotch Lovers Collection. We had Adam Polanski on to talk about that, and Phil is indicating them behind him up on his shelf. And today, indicating up on my shelf behind me, we have all of the Lost Lantern blends of American single malt whiskeys, or vatted malts, or blended malts, depending on how you want to label that particular category. We also have a dog in the background. That's right. Chloe's paid us a visit. She just sat down on the bed behind me. And also, I just traveled with these samples across the country, there and back. And so I've got them in a box, and I'm going to have to unpack this box in order to get into those samples. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to open up those bottles behind me. With no further ado, I want to hand it over to Nora to tell us a bit about herself. She's been on the show before, but for anybody who's catching us for the first time, it's always good to get the refresher. And also tell us anything you feel you want to tell us about the recent blends.
Yeah, well, thank you. First, thank you for having me. And I love an old school unboxing, so we'll see how this goes. But yeah, so I'm Nora Ganley-Roper. As Doug said, I am head blender here at Lost Lantern Whiskey. We are an independent bottler in the Scottish tradition. So for us, that means buying mature casks of whiskey from distilleries all over the country. What you may have heard about already, if you listen to the podcast with Adam, is that we do classic curation. We buy those casks and we put them out as single casks, showcasing truly what the distilleries do on a day in, day out basis. But what we also do is we spend a lot of time giving you a bird's eye view on the industry and showcasing what the landscape looks like. So for us, that's where the blends come in. We at Lost Lantern have put out dozens of single casks, but our blends are starting to be almost as numerous. We're getting there slowly. And we do two types of blends. We do what we call single distillery series blends. And that's blends that I do of one distillery's whiskey. So showcasing a side of the distillery that you wouldn't see otherwise. But today what we're talking about is our multi-distillery blends, specifically our blended malts for this. And with all of the things that we do at Lost Lantern, we're fully transparent on where everything comes from. But that's especially important when it comes to our blends because that's not as common. And for us, generally the blends, we're looking to tell a story, be it to showcase a certain style of smoke that we're seeing, be it just giving you a sense of what a certain style of whiskey is tasting like at a certain moment. We look at it as a snapshot in time, giving you a chance to taste, as I said, the landscape of American whiskey. So excited to get into some of our blended malts with you too.
So I did find them. And then I was like, wait, weren't there more? And then I realized, yeah, the Shadow and Flame are actually from a couple of years ago. So I don't have little sample bottles of those, but I do have those bottles behind me.
Yeah.
We may or may not talk about those.
Yeah. Older, but some of the original, I guess we had one American Vatted Malt, but then Shadow and Flame were a pair that came out, I think 2022, I want to say. So
I was saying 2023. I could be wrong.
That might be right. That might be right. I can't even keep everything straight anymore. I will have to check the distilleries in the blends. I do enough blending now that I can't always remember which distilleries are in which blend. So
yeah, I didn't look up the bottle listings. Instead, I was thinking back, when did I review that whiskey? Because it was one of my American Single Malt Advents. And I don't remember which one that was, actually. So it might have been 2022. Yeah, you're right. I think I skipped 2023, right, Phil?
I honestly, I can't remember. Time is weird.
It is. And yeah, and now that I have a son, like I don't even know what time is anymore. And also focus is way out the window. I don't remember things I did last week. It's like everything is just a haze of sleep deprivation is what it is. And yeah.
Well, we can say they came out a while ago. there's
that's for sure.
Yeah.
And they're great. But yeah, that's not really what this is about. We're so we talked ahead of time. We're going to pour the American Vatted Malt Reissue first.
Yeah, which is our original blended malt, our original blend, period. We launched Lost Lantern with our American Vatted Malt edition #1. And for those of you that are curious what the difference is between American Vatted Malt edition #1 and American Vatted Malt Reissue, the only difference is that it's been rebottled. So you may actually get a slight variation because in theory it's been aerated, but honestly it should be the exact same thing. And we upgraded the label partially because we wanted to be consistent with our latest release, and also we can only sell things in our tasting room in Vermont if they have been bottled in Vermont. So it was a way for us to be able to get that release into our tasting room finally. So same whiskey.
So that answers a question that I've been wondering about for a long time. Essentially, why rebottle? So this was the original label, and this was the first release, the only bottle that came out in 2020, I believe.
We released it with a set of 4 single casks all at the same time. Yeah.
And I found out about this bottle in early 2021 and missed the boat on those single casks. The earliest single cask I have is a 2021, which is Cedar Ridge.
Nice.
And so here is the new label. And I love this because it is technically a sticker, but it looks like it's screen printed on the bottle, and you get that transparency into the color of the liquid. And I think that this is, and it's only the blends that use this label style, right?
Correct. Yeah. And you should always, as you drink it, there's something that emerges on the inside of the back label for any of our Blue Label whiskeys. So it's a fun surprise as you go.
Okay. So, and it's only on so I can see that there's something printed on the back label in there. I can't quite make out what it is.
It's only on the Blue labels, and Blue for us is multi-distillery blends of all types of whiskey. So it's only those with the transparent front label.
Right. And so we're just talking about the blends of malts, but you've also done blends of bourbon and rye. I believe you're up to a bourbon, Far-Flung Bourbon 3. So
that's correct.
3 of them.
Yeah, 3.
And there's at least one Far-Flung rye.
Yeah, and 2 is actually making it into the market now. I think Vermont, we rolled it out early, and Sealbox currently has Far-Flung rye too as well, but not yet on our website. So, yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I got it was Far-Flung Bourbon 3 was the first bottle I received with the Discovery Club, which if I remember right, it was either like a sign-up bonus, like, hey, thanks for paying the subscription fee, here's a bottle for you, or it was a replacement for Discovery bottle #1 for people who joined later.
It was, the latter. So our original Discovery Club sign-up bottle, we had way more sign-ups than we expected. So we had to come up with a backup bottle for everyone that signed up after that first bottle ran out. So it was, it's a good illustration of what people can expect from the Discovery Club, but it was a fun, creative solution for that.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have known, except that I was comparing notes with other people. And I was like, wait, I am missing D1. What happened there? So now I've got FOMO and a bottle to at least go hunt out a sample for. But anyways, so it's never too late to retell the story of this first blend, because it's a lovely story. How this came to be, if you wouldn't mind indulging me.
I think my internet is a little funky. I can't tell. Can you both hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. I was going to say your video stopped a couple of times, but it seems like your audio's coming in okay.
Okay. So, I'm going to turn off my video and then I'll turn it back on and see if that helps. I can hear you. It's a little garbled. The fun of being in rural Vermont, and our Wi-Fi will sometimes be good and sometimes be bad. Hopefully that's a fluke. But yes, I can tell you about American Vatted Malt edition #1. So when we started Lost Lantern, we had always planned to do blends, multi-distillery blends. It was very much for us. We look at places like Douglas Lang that does both single casks and blends, and it was always something we talked about. But when we started Lost Lantern, we spent 8 months on the road, visiting distilleries all over the country and talking to them about Lost Lantern. And we started hearing from distilleries how jealous they were of us getting the possibility, starting to talk about blending for multiple distilleries. And it was actually Adam's idea to use the opportunity of getting people all in the same room to put together a blend that we never would have been able to source for that early in our trajectory. Because when we give people the experience of blending multi-distilleries together, tasting their peers' whiskey, people are more likely to say yes. And even more so, what we learned once we got there is people brought out some of the most interesting casks we've ever seen from those distilleries because they wanted to show off for each other. But American Vatted Malt Edition #1 was made collaboratively with the distilleries included in the blend. We did it in a single day in Colorado in 2018, I believe. And so that's Balcones, Copperworks, Santa Fe Spirits, 888, Virginia Distillery Co., and Westward Whiskey. And it was made collaboratively. We did not know if it would be successful going into it, getting everyone in a room and working on it together. We had no idea if there would be egos, if it would be great, what the deal was going to be, if the whiskey would blend well together. And it went so well. Obviously, we released the product at the end of it, but it was definitely a logistical challenge that we will not repeat anytime soon because it was a lot to get that all planned. But it was a great way to kick off Lost Lantern because we got immediate buy-in from those distilleries. And we got access to casks that would have taken us probably until now to get access to for that kind of project. And it ended up being 2 barrels from each distillery. That was not planned. We said it had to be at least 1 barrel from every distillery, but we ended up coming down to 2 blends, one that was way more Scotch-like, more classic, more used cooperage focused. And then this one, which is 2 barrels of barrels from each distillery, and it's roughly half new oak, half used cooperage, but it has 1 peated barrel, 2 mesquite smoked barrels. It has a lot of different finishes. Truly a snapshot of American single malt at that time. And I think it's been a great introduction for bourbon drinkers because of that new oak, that there's just enough that it's familiar, that it's provided an on-ramp. When we launched Lost Lantern, we went on so many podcasts of bourbon places, and we were like, we're going to make you taste this. We know that you don't think you like American single malt, and had so many light bulb moments with this whiskey for people. Mm-hmm. And it was a joy to have out there at the time, and still.
Yeah, it's tough to sort of thread the needle of, I mean, don't we know, right? As American single malt whiskey enthusiasts and educators, it's for so many people who don't already know what it is, it's so hard to like bring them along on like, oh, American single malt whiskey, so that's like Scotch but made in the US. And it's like, I mean, well, it's whiskey in the US that is made in the same style as the style of whiskey that comes out of Scotland that is the most. Work on your elevator pitch, right? But the best elevator pitch, of course, is just give them a good whiskey, right? Mm-hmm. And then threading the needle of like, no matter who you're talking to, are they a bourbon lover? Give them something that they'll resonate with as a bourbon drinker that's just a little bit different. Are they a Scotch lover? Give them something that resonates with them as a single malt, but is a bit different. It has a bit of that one's actually the more challenging one, actually. I think the vast majority in my experience, I think the vast majority of American single malts that I've encountered that people talk about, I want to say like 70-80% are really things that feel like more or less different shades of pretty much bourbon in terms of philosophy. But then it's made with 100% malted barley, and it may have some used casking or a finish on it or something like that. But it doesn't feel like Scotch, not even close in the most cases. Do you experience the same thing? I mean, I know we just had the Scotch Lovers release, which was like an oak and grist, I feel like belongs in that set because it's the same sort of like, wow, I didn't know malts that Scotchy could come out of the United States except for McCarthy's, you know?
Yeah. I mean, so to me, there's just so much breadth where you have American single malt that feels like it's very much in the Scotch tradition, but then you have American Single Malt that is clearly coming from bourbon with the new oak. And then you have American Single Malt, like I think about our friends in the Pacific Northwest, where they're doing something entirely different, where they're making a high quality beer and then distilling it, which is not at all what Scotland does. It's not at all what bourbon makers do. So it's a special beast of its own right. And I think American Single Malt, I find, is in some ways, when people have an experience with American Single Malt, they can love it, they can hate it, and it's probably because they had a certain style. And there's just there is no other whiskey that I have personally experienced that has such a range of flavors. So it can be wonderful if you start in the right place, but it can also be really hard if you grab the wrong thing for your palate in the moment, and you're more likely to miss with an American Single Malt than with any other category. So it provides a unique challenge for whiskey drinkers when they're getting into it and figuring out what distilleries to follow, which is why we created the Scotch Lovers Collection. Because we're trying to help people understand those distinctions and know if they're coming from one place or another, where to start, and hopefully fall in love with American Single Malt and follow that path. But there's so many access points. So that's part of what Adam and I see Lost Lantern's mission being, is curating that access point for a specific, or for many specific types of palates.
Yep. That reminds me, I want to talk about the store shelf issue, but before that, I want to take a step back and do a little bit of a segue in self-promotion. So you mentioned this first blend that you did, you got access to stuff, casks that you would not have otherwise gotten access to, because essentially you offered them something really fun to do with their time and in this case, their money and liquid and travel budget and so on. So that's a nice little segue to, we have a holiday special coming up. It is finally in editing. Actually, one of the people that I'd asked if they'd be interested in doing the holiday special was Adam back in the midst of time. And he actually referred me to Daniel Whittington because he felt like he'd be a better fit for the role that I had planned out. And we did in fact book Daniel Whittington and Caitlin Bartlemay and of McCarthy's and Mark Viertaler of Del Bach and Tyler Peterson of Westland Whiskey. And we've recorded and we're editing a smoky malt miss carol featuring these industry personalities, a little bit of improv acting. Some of it is quite cringe, but believe me, there's at least an hour worth of solid, like, real people interviews buried in that mess. So when it comes out and you're watching the first 10 minutes or so on and you're like, what are these guys doing? Bear with us. There's a payoff, I promise.
I love it.
So that's coming out in round about a week, hopefully before Christmas, but it's at least going to be holiday season no matter what happens. We're almost there. It's just a question of, are we going to bother re-recording any of that cringe, or are we just going to lean into the cringe? So chat, hey, if you're already subscribed to our Patreon, which is just about brand new, you can already see the cringiest acts, and we put those up early because we want to hear from you. Is that too much for YouTube? Is that too cringe? Do we need to make it better, or should we just lean into it? So let us know what you think. And now we're going to come out of the self-promotion segment and move on to, so the store shelf question, American Single Malt Whiskey. Lost Lantern, and this, I see this in stores all the time, no matter what brand it is. I went into the store looking for Fuse Spirits, and the question was, well, what product are you looking for? Are you looking for the bourbon, the rye, this funky malt thing, the Chicago Smokehouse, the flavored whiskey product, that's the whiskey blended with tea? Like, what are you looking for? Fuse products were all over the store, right? As a brand, like, what do you do with a brand that is spread across so many different categories? You spread it out, I guess. Or, I mean, unless you're going to be a boutique shop that like groups brands together, but then your consumer has to know where the brand is going to be. So what do you like a library? You alphabetize it. Like, so Lost Lantern's one of those brands where you've got every style of whiskey. You've got blends of bourbon, blend of rye, blend of American Single Malt, which is not even a type. So that's fun. And then you've got American Single Malts. You've got wheat whiskey. You've got malted rye whiskey. You've got everything under the sun. I know you mostly retail online. You retail out of your tasting room. Do you have any like local liquor stores that you're in, and like what does it look like as far as Lost Lantern as a brand on those shelves?
So for us in Vermont, the nice thing is Vermont products are together. So our products are actually together,
Awesome.
which helps. And they only have a small portion of what we do because there's just too much. But in some of the stores that have a bunch of our stuff, so we have some key lighthouses in California. Some of them do all of our stuff together. So like there's a Lost Lantern end cap.
Okay.
And some of them will spread it by type. But for us, the philosophy is our job is to educate the owner and the salespeople. So
Okay.
it creates a nice feedback loop where, yeah, if something's far away, it both allows people to hand sell our product and also help educate the customer. We really only sell these days into the really high-end curated stores that also have very experienced, educated, engaged customer base who understand the store and know where to find it. So it's been less of a headache. It will, as we grow, become more of a thing. But I think it's making sure that customers know that our product's in a specific store, and then hopefully the store will be trained enough to be able to point people in the right direction. But we designed our bottle to sit next to Scotch IBs, to sit next to blending houses in the US, to sit next to the distilleries we work with. So we've tried to make it look good and be eye-catching enough to be interesting for people, no matter where it sits on the shelf. But for independent bottlers everywhere, it's an ongoing question. Where are they going to shelve your bottle?
I figured I would grab SMWS as a comparison because actually the visual language on these labels is pretty similar.
Yep.
Which I only just now realized. And not in a way that makes you feel like it's a copycat, but just that, like, yeah, there's a cachet behind that kind of like the screen printed look and the relatively spare just words label that draws attention to actually what is the product and what does it taste like, and less marketing goop.
Yep.
It is speaking the same language, I would say.
And that's the goal. So if we're shelved next to them, it doesn't look out of place. It also doesn't look out of place next to, say, a Westland or a Westward. So we're trying to bridge that gap so that no matter where it is, it won't stick out like a sore thumb. It was an interesting challenge early on with Lost Lantern. And there's a reason why the new blend looks different than the American Vatted Malt, because we found that didn't pop the same way. So
I mean, I'll go ahead. I like when I have an opportunity to give you like effectively positive feedback, but like something that's less just me like fluffing you up all the time. My wife actually preferred the old label.
Oh, interesting.
I happen to prefer the new label, but there's essentially 3 labels in your catalog now, where you've got, and you can see them behind me. You've got the older labels on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
Camera left, my left, whatever. You've got the older labels on the left side, and then you've got the newer labels on the right side where they have that cream colored panel on the bottom, which again, I think I like that better. But somehow for my wife, that old label design just felt more elegant.
Interesting.
So, opinions vary. I love when we have opinions that vary because it makes me feel like there's actually a conversation to be had and not just like whatever Doug says is right, which is a horrible way to stroke my ego. So
I love it. Yeah.
I don't want to torture Phil with doing tasting notes right now because he's got Blind Sample Showdown coming up in like 2 hours. So I don't know, like, do we try like some impressions maybe, at least on the nose?
I will say I've already sipped and spit some of the reissue. And I will say, coming back to it, having now had something from every distillery that's in the blend, which wasn't the case prior to the release of the 888s through Lost Lantern, I can now identify more readily the parts that, and this is sort of doing the very nerdy sitting and like pulling it apart thing. I can get like the little bit of coastal vibe definitely comes from 888. There's a whisper of smoke, and there's that like really nice sort of soft, sweet core that I associate with the Virginia Distillery Company. And they all sit together so nicely.
And I've already, among all the Lost Lanterns, like at some point I started the podcast and I stopped writing reviews because it's just too much to do everything. We always aspire to get back to reviews, but this is one of the ones that I actually did review, if I remember correctly. And for me, my recollection of it is that like it feels different now, and I don't think that's because the sample is different. Like you mentioned, it could be like, oh, it aerated a little bit. There could be some differences, maybe. Like that's the really like geeky conversation Phil and I could get into at a different time. But it's okay. So let's focus on what it is today. It's got this sort of like there's a dark woodiness to it that I feel is the mesquite that is like it's coming in as like a tenor note, and then on top of that there's some like bright glittery like apple cinnamon. Now that I've gone in that direction, I feel like I've lost everything else.
There is just enough of that salt that it's like if you've ever made something that's sweet and the recipe says add just a pinch of salt, that pinch of salt is important and it elevates the other flavors and acts a little bit as like a flavor binding agent to make them all come together a little bit better. I don't know.
It's Santa Fe, not Del Bach in this one.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's part of why I'm like that doesn't seem right, because normally my mesquite smoke read is the Del Bach mesquite smoke. I've had a lot less Santa Fe.
So Santa Fe is a lot more delicate. We like to say whiskey Del Bach is to Santa Fe as Ardbeg is to Bowmore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's less smoky, it's less dense, it's more delicate, a little more fruity. You get less mesquite in the profile. We actually, before we did this, we did a bunch of tests to see if peat and mesquite could be blended. And obviously the answer is yes, because we've done a number of things with those two, but we didn't know before this. And what we found is they can, as long as they're not equal parts. Equal parts is either no smoke or awful. So that was an important stipulation for this blend. But there are two of the 12 casks are mesquited, so it's a sizable amount for how little smoke you taste in the final blend. And at the time,
I feel like there's peat in here too, but like,
so one of the two balcones. No, I was going to say one of the two balcones tasks in the blend was peated. And the reason whiskey Del Bach wasn't in this original blend was at the time we had a requirement that all of the barrels had to be the same sizes, so that there was no issue with that. So we would have invited them otherwise, but we didn't want the small barrel kind of math conundrum to come into play in this collaborative blend.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so the Westland is not a peated Westland then.
Correct. Okay, well, there's no Westland. There's no Westland in this. It's Westward.
Westward.
Oh, so there's 6 distilleries. I must have read the wrong thing off the website.
Yeah.
It is.
I wrote Westland and Westward, but it's actually Virginia Distillery Co. and Westward.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no Westland in this. Okay.
No Westland. They're in the
video description.
The next blend. Number 2. And that was because at the time when we did this blend, Westland was not selling to independent bottlers. So like with Whiskey Del Bach, important players, important partners to Lost Lantern, they just at the time weren't selling.
So was there any particular component of this that you felt like came out too much or not enough? Or it was all perfect?
No, it was good. I mean, the biggest issue was getting it to integrate finally. So there's a reason it's 105 proof, which is pretty low for us. And it was proof down from 120 something. And we did that because for whatever reason, it needed that much water to integrate, to really come into its own. So it was less the component parts, and it was more making sure that final palate didn't feel spiky. The nose came together, if I remember correctly, faster than the palate, but we ended up needing to do more water than we normally do. And we always reserve the right to do that because it's all about making the whiskey taste good in the end. But that was the unique part of this process for us, was the fact that we proofed it down. for this.
It's one of the last levers you can pull once you've done the blend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that true of any cask, or do you only do that on the blends?
So with single casks and single distillery series, we blended down the St. George Mountain Meadow slightly. We proofed down Gentle Giant very, very slightly to allow it to integrate. We have sometimes spoken about doing it for a single cask. We had a peated Boulder that was 149 proof, and Adam and I had a long conversation about whether or not we could release it as is, but ultimately decided that it didn't taste bad. It was just strong. And so we left it. But it always comes down to, we want to make sure that we're not putting something out that doesn't show well.
Yeah.
People may think that things are way too strong or not, and they can always add water, but we don't want something to be coming out and not being integrated or complex in the way that we want it to be under the Lost Lantern name.
Okay, nice. I think so. We're about half an hour in. We probably should move on. But I will say that once we corrected that, I thought it was Westland and it's actually via distillery. That fixed my brain on like the top notes that are in here. I'm definitely getting courage and conviction on the top end. And I was looking really hard for the Westland and I couldn't find it. So but that's the thing. Like sometimes when you know what's in a whiskey, it's hard to just take it for what it is. And you have to really, if anything, you need to be blinded on a whiskey like this. If you know too much, this is probably a unique problem that podcasters and reviewers have, but if you know too much about what goes into it, you can't help yourself. You have to dissect it instead of just appreciating it for what it is. But what I will say is, even though I was always tempted to do that with American Vatted Malt No. 1, except for the very first time I had it, where I had never heard of any of those distilleries before, and I just thought it was a wonderful American single malt whiskey. It was one of the things that, as you probably know, I've probably told you before, it's one of the things that made me fall in love with American single malt whiskey. Ever since then, I can't help but dissect it. Same is true of Shadow, same is true of Flame, and those are easier because there are only a few distilleries. But the Reissue is a whiskey that there's so much going on that you just have to take it at face value. So now that I've mentioned it, and we can segue on into the Vatted Malt Reissue.
Remix. Yeah.
Sorry,
we just did Reissue.
Yep. We just did Reissue. Remix. I was hoping I wouldn't make that mistake.
I know they're close. It's kind of fun. It's both a little fun and also kind of hard to remember sometimes the difference.
And this is way more distilleries, and I think that's really cool.
It's 11 distilleries, and the idea behind it was we took the last of American Vatted Malt Edition No. 1 after we'd pulled out what we wanted for our Vermont tasting room, mostly, and a little bit online. And Adam and I, we've been talking for a long time about what we wanted American Vatted Malt Edition No. 2 to look like. And what we ultimately decided on is we wanted to update or remix American Vatted Malt Edition No. 1. And the idea behind this is saying, okay, if we had done this collaborative blend now, who else would we have included in the group? And take that original blend and basically add in those distilleries that weren't included, but are an important part of what we see as the American whiskey landscape. It's not everyone, but it's the majority of the ones that we think we're missing from that first blend into this. So we added in Andalusia, we added in Cedar Ridge, we added in McCarthy's. I mean, another one that was always on our list, but we just hadn't convinced them to sell us whiskey yet by the time we did that first blend. We have Westland in there, and we have Whiskey Del Bach. So it's in many ways updating the snapshot from that previous time to 2025. So what is American single malt taste like? You'll notice there's less of that Pacific Northwest influence, which was so important in 2017, 2018, 2019. It's still important, but there's so many other flavors that are coming in, like Quintessential from Cedar Ridge, which is such a wonderful American single malt. And I think this is just that next step. It's interesting because there's actually more smoky whiskey in this, but I perceive it as slightly less smoky. I'll be interested to see what you two think, but it's an interesting update to that first blend.
I feel like the smoke in this one is less upfront, but it's more sort of throughout. if that makes more sense.
Yeah.
It's a deeper smoke, and I feel like it's got more of a balance to it. It is less like the smoke in AVM1 to me reads much more as peat, but the smoke in the remix is much more a mix of peat and the mesquite, and it settles differently. Um, and it's also just a denser whiskey in terms of the things that are in there, and that makes it way harder to like sort of dig in and pick it apart. And to me, that makes it more fun, but it also means that, when I pour some for my friends who aren't whiskey drinkers, they're just going to be able to sit there and be like, oh yeah, this is a really good rounded profile that has a little bit of everything.
So you said AVM1 is coming across more like peat than like
Yes.
mesquite for you? Interesting. I felt the other way around. It's mostly like the smoke is mostly mesquite with a little bit of peat in there for me.
Weirdly, I don't know why, but that's what comes out to me.
Yeah. I love when we disagree because again, like I feel like there needs to be more than one opinion in the room for sure. Either way, it's good whiskey.
It's worth noting that the Cedar Ridge is peated because that might not be obvious.
Is the Andalusia peated?
It is not. No.
Or is it smoked in any way?
I want to say no.
Because we had several smoke profiles, and then they've got the triple distilled, which is an.
I'm trying to remember. I can actually look up because we have a number. We've had a number of styles from them. I think I might actually have my blend spreadsheet up in the background. Well, hopefully this won't crash my internet. But let's see.
Whatever you do, don't share your screen because then we'll see all the details. Okay.
No, not smoked. You also see how wild our blending process is. So.
Yeah, I feel like everything that happens in whiskey and podcasting, like I've seen blending rooms before, and I've seen more than one podcast studio. Everything you see here it's a mullet, right? It's polished on the front end and a complete mess in the back end. Like this is the exact camera angle of my room that looks okay. Anywhere else you look is a complete mess.
There's a reason why mine is so narrow, and I'm so close to my bar back.
Yeah. That's one thing for my setup, I was like, I could be really close to that wall, but then I'm just going to weirdly restrict the room. So I'd rather have the desk all the way up against the other wall and like figure out a way to make it work. But I don't know. Anyway, that's not what people are here to talk about. So yeah, there's so many more things in here. Like it's one of those things where like the roll call is like, I'm really glad to see every one of those distilleries. Like AVM number 1, the more I've done podcasting wise, I'm like, man, there's stuff missing from that I feel like really should be in a snapshot of American Single Malt Whiskey. And I'm not going to say that like the remix is like perfect in that respect, but it feels like there's a lot less missing, right? It feels pretty complete to the point where maybe the choices came down to this didn't quite go in the blend. So notable exceptions. I know you've worked with Boulder before, and Boulder is not in the remix.
And that's only because we didn't have any of their whiskey on hand at the time when I was blending it. They were intended to be. We were hoping to have them in the blend, and it just didn't work out from a timing perspective, which does sometimes happen for us because part of it was, what do we have on hand? What do we have that works? There were a couple of distilleries that just didn't integrate and it didn't work in the blend, so they got cut. There were certain, like, we knew we had to have Cedar Ridge, we had to have McCarthy's, we had to have Westland, and then we were hoping the other, like Andalusia and Whiskey Delbach would fit and really wanted them there, but there were some like, I have to blend around specific distilleries, and then there were some additional names that I'm not going to rattle off that we were hoping would work, but at a certain point, like, it's 11 distilleries. I had to find a place to stop it because I could have blended this whiskey forever.
Right. And of course, the more different distilleries you put into a blend, the more complicated it gets to doing the blend. But I don't want to put those words in your mouth. I mean, like, tell us what the blending process was like here. Like, let us see the making of the sausage a little bit. Like, what were the difficulties in getting these whiskeys to integrate and make a product that you're happy with, where all the components, sit on an equal level, the right bits come out, nothing gets buried. Like there's so many things to think about.
Yeah, the hardest thing was getting the smoke dialed in because a lot of the component parts I was working with were smoky, and we wanted, like American Vatted Malt Edition #1, we didn't want the smoke to scare people off. We wanted it to be an entry point. There is some smoke here, but it's not something where someone should be so overwhelmed by it that they might not be able to experience the rest of the whiskey if their palate isn't ready for it. So adding in Cedar Ridge, their peated malt, the McCarthy's, the Whiskey Dalbach, I actually ended up having to add a lot more peat than I expected because the mesquite was so dominant. And so dialing in that level while continuing to make sure also that the whiskey tasted like the snapshot, the full landscape, because sometimes I'll blend something and Adam and I will be like, this is delicious, but this is not the story we're trying to tell. Like this is not where we're going. And so it ended up being finding that balance, having it taste like that bird's eye view of American single malt in this moment, and also making sure that the smoke was there, but it didn't become the dominant flavor like some of our other blends that we'll talk about where it's all about the smoke. So that was a process. It's not, luckily for me, it wasn't one of my longest blending sessions because we started with that American Vatted Malt Edition #1 as a base, which allowed me to build on top of it. If I'd started from 11 distinct things, it would have taken longer, but that cut my process down some. But it's definitely, it's an iterative process, and I'm there every day blending, putting together blends, and then my production guy will actually, with the pipette, build them for me because I don't have the time anymore. I used to do all of that myself, but we iterate for days and weeks if I need to until it comes together.
Okay, so you've got a pipette guy. So do you have like a matrix of like, you can't do an 11-dimensional matrix. Like that's just impossible. Like what variables are you, for instance, trying to explore?
Hold on, Doug. You don't know that Nora isn't somehow breaking physics?
No, it's just an Excel spreadsheet. It's I dial it in, we iterate. So he and I will, in general, when I blend, I taste all of the component parts and I put together 5 to 7 initial hypothesis blends. That vary a couple of things, and then we'll let it integrate for 24 hours usually, and then I'll taste it and then see where they land. And then it's just like fluidly kind of tweaking and following, and sometimes I'm like, whoa, I went off the wrong direction, let's reel it back in. What was the last thing we really liked? Start another direction. And so I'm sending him on a daily basis an updated spreadsheet with all of these different blends for him to build for me, because it is a lot of pipette work. He is much faster at it than I've ever been, so it's great to have someone that I can just say, here, please make me some things to taste. So
so you've got the hypothesis, you put it like you're doing the scientist work here. You've got the hypothesis, you put it into a spreadsheet and you say, this is what I want to test next. And if I would probably, I'm a spreadsheet guy. I love spreadsheets. Everybody who knows me knows I love a good spreadsheet. I would absolutely do it in a spreadsheet, and then I would do my own pipette work because I don't have guys. I don't have a staff, right? I've got Phil on the other side of the country, but I don't have staff in my tasting room here. That's really cool. It makes sense. I mean, you've got snapshots, you've got notes about everything that you liked and you didn't like. So at the end of the day, okay. So first of all, you said you started with Vatted Malt #1 as a baseline. Was that component of it, was it literally from the same vat that we got the original and reissue from, or was it a recreation?
Nope. It's we had whiskey left over. So
how many bottles theoretically of AVM #1 did you have? Wasn't it one barrel of every distillery?
It's 2 barrels. So we started with 3,000.
Okay.
I think we had like 700 bottles left.
Okay.
And we wanted to just relabel them and repurpose them for this.
Okay. And then you had more liquid left over that you used as the basis of appropriately weighted part of the final reissue?
I will note, sorry, on the back of the reissue, it does say one of 499 bottles.
Okay, so this is a much shorter run.
Much smaller. Yep.
And presumably, considering you've added at least 5 barrels to the vat, this can't be all of the liquid. So you're holding some back for your next blend, presumably.
No, this is everything. We used it
Oh,
either
really?
in the reissue and in the remix. And
Okay.
that's there is no more besides what's in these bottles. Yeah.
Okay. So you added
793 of remix and 499 of reissue.
Yep.
Yep.
I
Okay.
read the fine text.
Yeah. Well, you know the kind of month that I've had.
Yeah.
There is no time for reading right now. Fish posh.
So
yeah.
One of my like sort of constant like every time I think about like blending, what do you do if you find yourself with like a blend that you really like that's a ratio that won't give you like a really neat round number of barrels?
Oh, we have remnants all the time. We have like gallon jugs of random McCarthy's that we from stuff, and that's part of like the beauty of what we do. So we do the American Vatted Malt, we have shadow, we have flame, we have shadow and light. Like these are all things where some of the remnants left from shadow and flame were used in shadow and light because we know that we're always going to use it, and some of those remnants were also put into American Vatted Malt because we're constantly doing new blends. I don't worry about it because I know that there'll be a future use for it. That's one of the lucky things for an independent bottler, and a lucky thing for us that we have our own production space. If I was doing this at a contract bottler, like they would have gotten rid of us a long time ago. Which is why when we started doing blends like this, we got our own space so I can be as annoying for my production team as I want to be, and they just roll with it. And we have 5-gallon drums that have stuff, because when you have too little in a cask, it'll evaporate too quickly. So sometimes we'll pull stuff out, but we have a ton of just like random cool remnants sitting around at all times of bourbon, of rye, of American single malt, of all the things. And we just make sure that we have that list of what's sitting there for the subsequent blend.
Right.
So that makes me, just because it occurred to me, have you ever done a tasting room exclusive blend? Just with
we have not yet. We've done a tasting room exclusive single cask. We did our first in October, but we have done some small custom store blends, which I think we'll do more of, is for specific retailers or clubs doing blends specifically for them, because it's a great way to repurpose the remnants. But we haven't yet done anything for our tasting room. It'll come eventually.
It was just because I can't imagine having a tasting room and having those remnants sitting on shelves in your laboratory and not having that impulse to do a tasting room blend.
One must imagine the temptation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly just I constantly have a backlog of blends that I'm supposed to be working on. So for us, it's less space for creativity in some ways, because I'm constantly I know I need to do Farfung Bourbon 4 and Farfung Rye 3 and constantly just rolling into new batches. Because despite having a team, we're still teeny tiny. There are 5 of us these days. So small, but
no shortage of ideas. Yeah. So, and that's good news. It's a good problem to have, I guess. Although you said it restricts the creativity a little bit.
Sometimes it's like, well, it's time for the next Farfung Bourbon. Like, we're running out. We're not going to create something that's a one-off blend. I need to make sure our flagships are there. And we have, I mean, the creativity is still there. We just can't necessarily execute on it. There are we have a long list of great ideas that will hopefully come to fruition at some point. But when it comes down to it, if something like the state of Vermont comes to me and says, we need more X, I'm going to blend, because they order in pallet sizes rather than case sizes. So.
Makes sense. So did you have remnants left over when you did the original Vatted Malt blend, or was that an equal parts barrels?
That was just barrels.
Huh.
Yep.
Cool.
which was happenstance, and I will take it because at that time, Virginia Distillery Company was doing our blending and bottling, and that would have been probably impossible to hold on to. So they would not have been happy with me if I'd been like, "Can you hold on to these gallon jugs?"
Right.
Now that it's
Makes
my
sense.
space, I can
So-
have as many jugs as I want.
Okay, so just I want to press it on that just a little bit. So you're the blender, you're the mastermind. You've got the spreadsheets, the formulas, and so on. But Virginia Distillery Company was actually doing the vatting for you at one point in time.
Yeah, so we only got a Lost Lantern space in when was that? 2023. So
feels still recent, whatever it was.
It is a couple years ago. Before that, we for a hot second we worked with Virginia Distillery Company, and then when the pandemic hit and I had to take a road trip to Virginia and not be able to stop anywhere to go to the bathroom during the pandemic, we decided to move it all the way up to Vermont, and we worked with a distillery called Village Garage in southern Vermont for a number of years. But then as we started doing more blending and needing space for remnants and other things like that, we realized that it was time to move it in-house to give us full flexibility and be able to do what we needed to do to dial in the blends to the quality level that we thought Lost Lantern really required.
Okay. But now, okay. And so I guess the implied part of that question is, was there a point in time where Amanda Beckwith wanted to have an input on the blend, or was it all like, it was all really like professional, like separation of concerns kind of thing?
Yep. No, they never.
I would imagine nothing less.
Yeah, we only did the one blend, and Amanda was in on the blending, the collaborative blend. But no, it was the Lost Lantern project for sure.
All right, so we got a comment on the Instagram chat, so I'm going to put that up. So Overland Dram says, "Cheers, glad I caught a quick part of your chat. Nora, thanks for sharing some inside baseball on blending. Had a chance to try Flame back in January 2024.
Nice.
Amazing."
Nice. Well, thanks.
As long as we're doing comments, Ethan W has McCarthy's 10 for tonight. Awesome stuff, even better than I was expecting. I definitely convinced a few people to buy that, and then when they got it, they're like, "Oh, I gotta get some more." Germ said as much. On
It's so
I believe it was last night on the Blind Sample Showdown.
I believe Germ can be quoted as saying that McCarthy's is the best peated American whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's my thought. That's my opinion.
He said it last night.
Yep. We're gonna make sure we're gonna get some quotes out there. But we need to mix in some embarrassing quotes too. And tease him with an April Fool's reel or something.
So I have a weird question going back to smoked malt, and you've worked with peat and mesquite. Have you worked with malts from other distilleries that are smoked with other woods?
No, no. We haven't sourced anything that's not peated or mesquited that is smoked another way. We did an Andalusia that was Irish peat that was that it was in a barrel that held striker. That's like as close as we've gotten, but we haven't yet come across a barrel that really fits what we're looking for like, because we're either sourcing for blending or for specific collections or themes. And so far, nothing has come across my desk and Adam's desk that fit into either of those. I find that smoke can be really, really finicky. And I've dialed in mesquite and peat and things like applewood smoke and other things. I don't have the confidence in their integrative properties to take the leap on that yet, unless I knew that we were also going to release a single cask and then I could steal a little bit if it worked.
Okay. I mean, I was just wondering because, like, taking a snapshot of American Single Malt, that is something that a lot of distilleries are doing, and I was just curious if that was something that you were maybe sitting on for a future blend.
Not yet. It'll probably happen at some point. We never say never. It just hasn't happened yet. Yeah. So and on that note though, I feel like the statistics nerd in me wants to say, as long as we're talking about smoky American single malts,
you're right. There's a significant fraction of SKUs that exist that are hardwood smoke, but they're often things from like Liberty Pole, where it's like a one-off cherry wood smoked something or other, or Copper Fox, which is not so one-off, but they have a lot of different SKUs. But if you look at like the market volume of smoke that's not peat or mesquite, it's
really
actually
small.
still a small part. And then when you look at the whole market of American single malt and you look at the volume of smoky whiskey, like the sales volume of smoky whiskey, actually really small. If you sort of enumerate, and even from the big players, right? Del Bach like does most of their, like, they pay the bills on the classic, which has no mesquite smoke in it. Westland, most of their whiskey is like a small component of it is peated, but most of it is not smoky. And like, and what are the other big, the other largest distilleries by volume, I believe, are Westward and Balcones. Most of what they release is not peated, or in the case of Westward, all of what they release is not peated. So everybody who's doing peat or smoke, except for McCarthy's, has other SKUs that pay the bills that don't have smoke in it. And then the rest of the brands just don't even mess with smoke at all. Like, if we're talking about a snapshot of the market, I think we all are putting our thumb on the scale of what we wish it would be when we say 40% of this blend remix has some kind of smoke in it. That's not actually the reality of the market, right?
And that I guess brings up another question. Do you have plans for a totally smokeless blend?
Nothing in the works right now. I mean,
Okay.
we don't have any specific one-off American blended malts planned
Okay.
for next year. I think Adam's going to put in the chat. He's going to be like, "Don't say anything," but because this release for the Scotch Lovers Collection generally will carry us a good long way. Because as much as I'm excited to be talking to y'all, and I love American Single Malt personally, it's 0.25% of our portfolio, because that's where the demand is, where we do half bourbon, which I also love. But it for us, doing an entire single malt collection for the fall was a big thing for Lost Lanterns, the first of its kind for us. And we were very excited about the reception we've gotten. Honestly, it well surpassed what we thought it might look like, especially in the space where we all are when it comes to the industry.
Yep.
But for us, we're doing some different things for spring and summer, and honestly for fall too next year. So
I mean, that is an important thing to point out, that as much as like when you're talking to us and like to Germ and the spaces that we're in, single malt is a huge part of our interest in whiskey. But for the average consumer, single malt is barely on their radar. And so it makes a lot of sense, and it makes it that much cooler, I think, that you do have the vatted malts, because they really are sort of, a massive part of how I introduce people to American Single Malt Whiskey.
Yeah, and Lost Lanterns blends are a roadmap to the best of the best in the category. I mean, not to play favorites. I mean, like I said, this blend is missing Boulder. Maybe it didn't fit. It's also missing Stranahans, but I believe Lost Lanterns portfolio doesn't have any Stranahans yet, so that makes sense. I would like to ask why, but I'm sure the answer is they just haven't been interested in selling you a cask yet.
Any distillery that has ownership, especially ownership like Proximo, takes many years to get access to their whiskey. So we will never say never on a distillery. It just takes a long time to get all the contracts in place. Yeah.
So you had your foot in the door with Balcones before Diageo came along. That's an interesting case. I don't know if you can say, but do you still have that same access that you used to have, or is it renegotiating?
It took a while. It took a while. We had to jump through a bunch of hoops for Diageo, but yes. Yeah. And we love that team, and we're lucky that they love us back. So they also really advocated for us and for what we're doing. Yeah.
In my industry, we call it side channel. When you've got like, your manager gave you this project and told you to work with this other team, but you know a friend, and then you bypass the hierarchy that would slow you down because you know people.
Yeah,
Well,
it also helped that we won Best American Single Malt at San Francisco with Gentle Giant. Like
That helps.
a
That
month or two after Diageo bought them, and they saw that value in working with us.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been a little bit harder if we hadn't gotten that like prestigious award with their whiskey in a way that was very clear that it was their whiskey.
Yeah.
So that relationship definitely was solidified that way.
I think one of the unanswered questions about Diageo's ownership of American Distilleries is, are they planning on doing blended whiskey the way that they do blended Scotch? And no news so far, but it's certainly.
I love it. Honestly,
Yeah.
we need more blenders there, because blended whiskey in the US is still seen as bad, bottom shelf. Like there's so many people who are like, I don't drink blends. So the more places, and especially more places with money to put towards education, the better in my mind.
Yep.
So I'm
Yep,
like,
the
bring
marketing
it
power,
on.
right?
Yeah.
And speaking of, I guess, oddball blends, and maybe I shouldn't call it that, but so Westland released a blended whiskey that contains their single malt as well as some light whiskey and a couple of other things, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't on my radar. That wasn't on my bingo card for 2025.
Yeah, I haven't tasted it. Unfortunately, it hasn't made it to Vermont yet, but I mean, like I was saying, like bring it on. We need more people doing cool blends and creative things, and I'm here for it.
All right, so
And
in
also,
the interest of time, and we could keep on talking, I'm sure.
Yeah. Shadow and Light.
Shadow and Light is the next place to go. So this was not technically part of the. Oh, funny! I just grabbed a Westland Glencairn Speak of the Devil. Might want to put that back. This is not technically part of the Scotch Lovers Collection, but you did mention it in some of your social media marketing for the Scotch Lovers Collection.
Yep.
The Shadow and Light, and I don't know how much you can say about the project this is attached to. At this point, it's public knowledge.
I can say exactly what it's attached to, and we technically started releasing it in the spring, just kind of quietly. So this was made in partnership with the team behind the docuseries called Independent Spirits, which goes through the history of independent bottling. So starting from the OGs in Scotland and going all the way to places that are doing new, interesting things today. It's a 4-part series. I'm featured in episode 4 as kind of one of the future looking independent bottlers taking this model and applying it in new ways. It's a wonderful docuseries. We actually have had a number of new employees start, and we had them watch it, not because I'm in it, but because if you're curious about independent bottling, it's the best quick way to understand the history and the market as it is now. Our friends Single Cask Nation are in there, and it's a really cool docuseries, and we worked with them to make a special whiskey to put out in partnership with them. We're the only ones doing American single malt, so what we ended up doing is I blended peated and mesquited single malt together, and we called it Shadow and Light. So kind of a hat tip to the Shadow and Flame blends, which we've mentioned in the past, but both speaking to the tradition, the Scottish tradition of peated malt, but bringing in the American side of things as an independent bottler focused on American whiskey. And this includes Whiskey Del Bock, Whiskey Del Bock, Santa Fe Spirits, McCarthy's, and Cedar Ridge. So 2 distilleries from each.
Yep.
And it is a retrospective on smoke in the US. What does it taste like? Where are we seeing both that tradition and innovation collide? And this is actually Adam's favorite blend that I've ever made. So it's a fun whiskey there as well. But a unique product, a unique project for us, but one that we're super excited about.
Yeah, I really like this blend. Was really excited to finally get my hands on it. I, for some reason, had like no end of issues just getting this ordered. Like I saw when it went on sale in April and just kept trying. I want to add it to my Discovery Club order, and it just didn't work over and over and over again until it finally did. So, really glad to have it. I got it actually essentially at the same time as the Scotch Lovers Collection.
It's crazy, yeah.
Which is that's not technically true. That's just how it feels in my brain because like. When I got it, I was on my way out of town and then I was gone for a month and then I come back and like, now I can finally like spend some time with it. But, and I packed up this little sample to take with me because all I could take was a box of 2-ounce samples, which you saw earlier.
Yep.
I really love this blend. For me, you can pick out something about each of the distilleries that went into this blend. And that's just in the tasting notes. It doesn't taste like Del Bach and Santa Fe and McCarthy's and Cedar Ridge. But if you look at a list of tasting notes, you're like, I can tell where each of those things is coming from. And that's really cool that like you have to like just analyze it for what it is. And then you can look at your analysis and say, oh, I get it. I can contextualize where that's coming from. But the other cool thing about this is, as you said, this is for the independent spirits series. This was your way of saying this is American independent spirits. And you picked all smoky American single malts. And you put a magnifying glass on that tiny segment of the American whiskey sector. There's so many other ways you could have taken that, but this was like your opportunity, your love letter to this particular corner of American single malt whiskey. I think that's really cool. I think the blend came out awesome.
Thanks.
That's my take on it.
And it's fun because this is a unique opportunity and why we included it in the Scotch Lovers Collection, because this was targeting a Scotch audience, because we knew that the majority of people that would be watching this docuseries came from the Scottish side. So we could lean into smoke in a way that sometimes scares off an American like drinker, bourbon drinker. And so Adam and I are both, we love smoky whiskey, and so we saw it as an opportunity and ran with it. One thing I also wanted to add here is the interesting thing with mesquite and peat. This is roughly 2/3 peated single malt and 1/3 mesquite, and I think that I had to do that to make them feel equal.
Yeah.
Because
they do feel equal.
The mesquite's so dominant from a blending perspective in a way that like you wouldn't necessarily anticipate. But I actually, while you were talking, I went and looked at my blend spreadsheet, and it truly is 2/3 peat, 1/3 mesquite.
Yeah, very cool. I think the thing about mesquite is that like if you think about flavor spectrum as like a musical spectrum, right? Like there's a particular profile that mesquite smoke does, that it has some top notes to it. It feels sweet and almost like dried fruits in a way, like really bright dried fruits. But at the same time, it has this sort of tenor smoke note where like peat usually sort of fills in like bass notes and like right in the middle. And the mesquite smoke sits at a different level that's like between the sort of the bass and the alto. It's like the tenor level, and then it also has these nice top notes. So and then you've got the fact that you've got the peat smoke and the mesquite smoke occupying a different part of the tasting spectrum lets them each speak really well without necessarily, they could clash, but skill to the blender, they don't. But they're easy to detect. So you can say, I can taste Del Bach in there. That tastes like, I don't know, Frontera to me, for example, or Dorado. Frontera, I think, is the one that doesn't have smoke in it. You know what I mean? Like that tastes like a Del Bach product. And then there's like, I've had a couple of Santa Fe's. That part of it tastes like Santa Fe. And like, is it a brandy cask? Is it apple brandy?
No, I think it's not apple brandy. I think it's just their standard mesquited.
Okay. Yeah. Their stuff goes so well in apple brandy that like it almost like they're just synonymous to me at this point. Santa Fe tastes like apple brandy cask. So, but whatever it is in there, I feel like I detect the Santa Fe, and then you can detect the McCarthy's in that iodine level of the smoke.
Mhm.
And then Cedar Ridge is like has a really strong malty profile to it. So peat notwithstanding, I feel like I detect the Cedar Ridge more from the malt
The structure.
profile
That's
because
interesting.
it's that part of it is so punchy. But that's just my take. And I had notes written that I couldn't find. Phil, what do you think? And I know we're getting close to when you've got to do blind samples. So if you want to pass,
I don't
I
have
understand.
any of this one.
What?
I haven't managed to order a bottle yet.
Whoops.
Yeah, it's one of those timing things. When I got around to time to order this bottle, I was feeling a bit skint, so I didn't, and I regret it.
Well,
Understandable.
now you have all the FOMO that should
Yeah.
drive
Oh yeah.
purchase. Yeah. Yeah. Well, luckily it's still
Tracy
on our
Silly
website.
Yorkie, thanks for joining us for the first time, I believe. Yeah, peat is its own exploration. Take your time with it. But mesquite is its own unique thing that you can get in the United States. So that's pretty cool. So should we talk about, let's probably not taste them, but let's talk about the Shadow and Flame, because I believe one of our past episodes with Lost Lantern, we really did a deep dive on
I think so.
Shadow and
Yeah.
Flame. So
It's worth
and
mentioning.
I'll be
Yeah.
real embarrassed if I'm wrong about that, but I seem to remember that's the case. So we don't need to go do a whole tasting again. But like if we just look at the specs, so Shadow was the peated one, and it had
Yep.
a mix of Boulder, Cedar Ridge, and McCarthy's.
Yep.
Flame had Santa Fe and Delbach.
Yep.
When you're talking about mesquite smoked American single malt, Santa Fe and Delbach are the obvious choices. You could add in Andalusia, but out of their products, they don't have anything that's just mesquite smoke. It's that
Right.
it's Striker, which is a mix. So it makes sense you wouldn't include that in a blend like this. Although when we did our mesquite smoked roundtable discussion, we included Andalusia because we wanted to talk about the challenges of working with mesquite peat from a distillation perspective. Mesquite smoke, sorry, mesquite peat.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. So it makes sense. We see Flame was basically transported directly into Shadow and Light. Different blend, obviously. And once again, I note the absence of Boulder Spirits. So I want to press in on that a little bit more. So here we have Remix and we have Shadow and Light, both missing Boulder Spirits. What is it about Boulder Spirits that makes it not fit into so many of these blends?
It's so high proof. So high proof. So generally their stuff is hazmat, which is over 140 proof. And with this, it just was too strong. Sometimes a whiskey, when it's so out of the profile of other things from a proof perspective, just won't iterate. And when it comes down to it, sometimes Boulder works and sometimes it's too strong. I think with this, definitely with Remix, but maybe even with this, we haven't had a ton of Boulder. Stay tuned to next year for some stuff on that front. But there are times where I think we had a little bit left, but it's so strong. And with some more delicate stuff coming into the picture, it just will wallop other component parts.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. When I think Boulder, if I'm thinking the Lost Lantern Boulder, you're right. I'm thinking that's going to be punchy and intense and high proof. When I think Boulder single casks, same thing. I have 7 bottles of Boulder Spirits behind me that are blended and proofed down. And if anything, at that presentation, they come across in a nice soft way. So I guess it's just the difference in the type of product.
So because we blend everything at cast strength, that's when it becomes a thing. In theory, we could proof it down and then add it. We've never done that. And it would break our standard process, and maybe it's worth doing sometime just to see how it works. But
more spreadsheets.
even if we're proofing something down, we blend it all and let it integrate, and then we add the water. And so if you have that, if everything else is like 110, 120, and then you add a component that's 140, it can work, but it very often won't work.
Yeah, you're adding whiskey concentrate of a particular flavor to something that is less concentrated. Yeah, it makes sense. And
especially because Boulder
lower too, right?
Yeah, well, and it's a new oak, so that can also be like at that high proof, you're getting a lot of tannic structure, and like sometimes it's great when you need that mouthfeel and structure, and it can be a really important component. But I find that density, that chewiness can also send things off from a blending perspective. There were things just don't play well with others. I mean,
Sure.
I the Cedar Ridge, the only distillery I can say has always played nicely with others. Every other distillery I work with, sometimes it'll throw elbows with something else. Cedar Ridge, delicious on its own, friendly to all. So you'll notice that we work with their whiskey a lot, and it's because of that, like their true universal style of whiskey. And I don't know what they do that makes it work, but I love it as a blender because I can count on it being nice and working with whatever else I'm playing with.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I usually think of a whiskey that has that property is like, this is why we have blended whiskey in Scotland that has a mix of single grain and single malt.
Yeah.
Single grain tends to just work really well as the glue that holds a blend together. It makes for great mass market products that you can make a lot of because you don't need as much malt to bring the flavors of the malts forth.
Yep.
Cedar Ridge, though, to me is, I would say, one of the most opinionated single malts that I have on my shelf. Scotch, American single malt, all the way across the board. I picked it out in an instant when I did Blind Sample Showdown. I knew I was drinking Cedar Ridge, and I almost got the finishing cask right too.
So I would say, except for the single casks, part of that is Murphy and the wonderful blending work that he does, where he has a signature style that is his, and he's building Cedar Ridge, the Solera stuff that he does. I think that he's a kind of unique voice in that space. I find the individual casks are less like that. They play a little bit more nicely. And so that's the beauty of having a blender like Murphy, crafting that final whiskey that makes it so Cedar Ridge. But the individual casks allow a little bit more flexibility all around.
That makes a lot of sense. And that explains, I think, so I have a couple of single barrels from the Quintessential, and I think they have that somehow. They have that same kind of opinionated, punchy malt style to them, that they feel like they all are quintessential. But then you have the Lost Lantern Cedar Ridge 2021 in a sherry cask, and it is off profile. And I don't mean bad. I mean, it's not quintessential. It is Cedar Ridge, and I can taste that it's Cedar Ridge, but it reminds me more of the bourbon than the single malt. If anything, it doesn't taste like quintessential. So I see what you mean. That's really interesting.
That even the single cast that they're putting out under Quintessential, that is Murphy's hand in selecting those. And as I said, shows that perspective, and he's very good at what he does. And the fact that it is consistent, even with different barrel finishes and styles, that speaks, in my opinion, to his mastery of their whiskey.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So we love torturing our blenders with doing our little funky blends here. So we could do that, but Phil, you can opt out because one, you don't have Shadow and Light, and two, you have Blind Sample Showdown coming up in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Or an hour, whatever it is. No, yeah, half an hour. Okay, we got to move it along.
Yeah.
So we're almost done here. Should we go ahead and blend Reissue and Remix together? I've got about equal parts of both. I'll leave the Shadow and Light out of it. So
it should taste good. It's already in there.
Yeah, it's already
remix. So
we're cheating this time. So last time we did this, Nora, you observed that oftentimes the last thing you add to a blend, no matter what you do, is gonna cut through.
Yep.
So I just added the Reissue to the Remix. So if anything, I just made it taste more like Reissue. That's the theory, right?
Yep.
Well, that could have got, or if I'd done it the other way, it would taste more like Remix. So okay, we'll let that cook for a minute.
And then I have a weird question. I guess I hope it's not weird. What are you looking forward to blend wise? Like just in general, like what are you looking forward to, like in the space or that Lost Lantern is aspiring to? What's something that excites you?
I mean, for me, it's always getting to play with new distilleries whiskey. We're not sourcing from the same places every year. And so I'm getting to play with a wider and wider array of distilleries. I like to say I get to paint with more colors than I think anyone else in the US. And so I am very excited about that. We have some other interesting things from some important new distilleries coming out later this year, which I'm not going to say anything about, but getting to play it. Honestly, every time a distillery lets me play with their whiskey, it feels crazy to me because they are trusting that I will not ruin it. Unlike with the single cast where we're just showcasing what they already do. And so for me, being able to add more colors and more colors and more colors feels like such an honor and a joy. And the trust that people put in me is still staggering a lot of the time.
Yeah, there is definitely as a like I'm a fan of American Single Malt. How did I get into podcasting? I wanted to talk to people who make the stuff.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's definitely a segment of people who care more about that than the regular old distillery tour type of thing. So definitely there was it would be wrong to say that there was no part of this that was a vanity project. But I genuinely love sitting here and learning about stuff from you all. And there is a part of me that is just so envious of the people who get to work with the stuff day in and day out. I know it's hard work when you're really doing it, and like I'm seeing the romantic side of right. I'm not the one who's elbows deep in spreadsheets 8 hours a day. I'm not the one who has to taste and quality control 100 barrels a day in a massive warehouse to make sure that nothing's going wrong. Like there comes a point where drinking whiskey or even tasting sip and spit whiskey just becomes a chore, I imagine. Thankfully,
work.
I'm far on the consumer side of that particular line in the sand. But I can't imagine the joy that it would be to work with, to make art as you do out of so many people who've trusted in many cases their best barrels to you. That is,
I'm lucky for sure, and I know it. And Adam knows
you've
it.
done great, and you've done great by them. Too is the thing.
Well,
I imagine.
I appreciate it.
I imagine there was no shortage of anxiety. I think we've talked about this before. That like you started doing this blend in 2020 or 2018, whenever it was, and we're like, what if all of this whiskey gets screwed up?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was a good thing about doing it collaboratively because we had buy-in from all of the distillers in those early days. And for the early days of our blends, and even now, we always offer to send people a sample before we finalize the label. And at the beginning, everyone tasted it. And honestly, I kind of liked that because once again, I got their okay.
Mm-hmm.
And now very few people want to taste it, which is both an honor because people trust me, and also I find it personally a little terrifying because usually it's just me and Adam tasting it.
There's also a phrasing element to that.
Yeah.
Like, nope, don't want to taste it. Nah.
There's like, nah, I trust you. Go do your thing. So yeah.
Show us the finished product when it's done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and everyone gets a bottle. All of our distillery partners will always get a bottle of whatever we use their whiskey for. So
yeah, that's awesome. I have to believe. I mean, I'm sure there's blenders who don't do that, but I can't imagine myself, if I were to ever go into business doing what you do, that I would ever even consider not giving away a free bottle to everyone who contributed.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, sure. Money has already changed hands. The deal is done, but it just feels like a courtesy to say your stuff was in this product. You should have a bottle of it.
Yeah, you should enjoy it. Also, tell people about it, so it's a win-win.
That too. Stick it up on a shelf in your distillery tour and show it off, right? It's always free marketing, right?
Yep.
Speaking of which, you can buy our Glencairns, and I'm doing it at cost. There's an order form. It's always in the description. You guys know where to find it. I am shipping some of those out this week. If you don't already have your order in, it's probably coming to you in January sometime. Not because there's only so much I can do before Christmas, but yes, these Glencairns, they're getting shipped. So it's a real thing now. I sorted out the thing with my accountant that I needed to sort out. That was a whole like, hey, I just started a business. How do I do sales tax?
Fun. All the fun parts of
the part that is absolutely not fun. I just want to sit here and review whiskey. Why do I have to do sales tax now? I've as I've said it over and over again, starting a podcast, we played ourselves, right? I would be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that said, hey, if I start a podcast, I might get some free whiskey.
Little
like,
did you know.
yeah, sure, that happened. But it turns out that's way more of a problem than a good thing. It does save me the money of actually buying the stuff, because hey, we get to run the show for longer if we don't spend as much money buying what we need to do the show. So like and you do this long enough, and the new shiny, hey, I've got a podcast, that's fun. You start off going like, I have boundless energy to do this thing, and at some point when you've done 54 episodes, you realize somewhere in the middle of all that, the work comes in. It becomes actual work. And so at some point I started to feel a lot less bad about accepting free samples.
Yeah, fair enough.
One must.
That's not so reasonable.
Yeah. But anyways, I don't know why I went off on that particular tangent. I had one last question for you, Nora. And I'm sorry, I keep doing this weird stretch thing. Like I pulled a muscle, so I'm sorry if I look like a total goof. So I had one last question for you, Nora. In your iterations of spreadsheet after spreadsheet, change a variable, do the pipettes, all that stuff, was there ever a blend that came out that you loved, but for one reason or another you thought you couldn't bring it to market?
It's usually because it doesn't tell the story that we wanted it to tell. So there have been times where we like the whiskey, especially less than the blended malt realm, because I think in some ways we have less of a story we're trying to tell explicitly. Although American Vatted Malt, we are trying to showcase the landscape, but for our far-flung series, so we have far-flung bourbon and far-flung rye, and what we're really trying to encapsulate is that bird's eye view of bourbon and rye. And sometimes I'll make a whiskey that tastes good, but we're like, it's too singular in focus. It's showcasing primarily like one aspect of climate, and that doesn't, I keep on iterating, because for us that flagship needs to have some, it's not the same every time, but having that consistency for our flagship where they feel like siblings rather than disparate random bourbons or ryes, that will sometimes come into play. But by and large, no, because we're trying to make the best whiskey with the component parts. So it kind of, the whiskey, we let the whiskey speak for itself for the most part.
So when it comes out great, that's it. Send it.
Yeah, don't touch it. Stop worrying about it. Stop like trying to tweak things. Like, we're good.
So you sort of like know when it's done, or do you say like, that's great, let's push it a little further? Or
so that's where the way that Adam and I work really helps, because I will do a lot of blending and then I will usually bring it to him and say, tell me what you think. And he will tell me, you're almost there, you're not there at all, or like, we're good. Let's put it through final analysis, which for us is when we think a blend is done, we will bring it home. We will drink it like someone would actually drink the whiskey over a big rock in a Glencairn, experience it as if we were having a real, like not a lab experience, but a real experience, and test, does it fall apart? Does it taste good when it's sat over an ice cube and the ice cube is fully melted? That's the final test for us. And so I'm not totally in a bubble, so having a partner in that who has to say yes before it can go out, that's a huge final check for me to know when we're there, or if I need to keep tweaking.
Makes a lot of sense. And we've said before, you've said on podcasts before, you and Adam don't necessarily have the same palate, the same preferences. So when you both like something, it's near guaranteed to be a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
Which,
exactly.
I think that's the backbone of everything you've done as a brand, really, is that like, I never worry about recommending a bottle of Lost Lantern. Never even a little bit. I'll say, I'll bring a Lost Lantern to a tasting, or somebody will say like, hey, I want, XYZ rye. And I'll be like, I'm not that, it still is, but I'm not that big of a fan of rye. I would still recommend, this rye over anything else on the market, because I know between Adam and Nora, it's a crowd pleaser. So
yeah, we'll appreciate that. That's the goal.
I think we've killed enough time. We could probably get into tasting this thing. This completely unnecessary, doesn't need to exist blend.
Just kill Phil's palate a little bit more.
Yep, I'm sabotaging him. Make sure he's got a spit cup.
He's
Bill, how much?
afraid
How
to-
much do you have left in your glass?
I
You're
will
not going
say,
too hard on it.
I will say there's something that weird that happened in my glass. I
Yeah,
have
same.
no idea how.
I'm glad it's
Really
not just me.
strong, like ginger snap cookie note popped out, and I have no idea where it came from.
It reminds me of the VDC Hardy bread, Hardy
Yes,
wood
Hardywood.
somehow.
Hardywood gingerbread stout finish.
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from. Like I can't like put my finger on which components would mix to make that flavor.
I'm gonna just throw out a guess. It's something mesquited and the VDC. There's something about the VDC. We're talking about like flavor profiles again. We're like that, like it's not a soprano note. It's a little bit under there, but there's something about VDC that always sticks out in the profile, right in that mid-high part of the profile. And I really like that about VDC, but like nobody else occupies that range. And so you put VDC into a blend and it's there. Yeah, that's so weird. And it's also it's like a little bit seaweed, but
Mhm.
like I'm talking about like the ramen, the seaweed you put in
Yeah.
ramen, like the nori
Yeah.
sheet when you've got it in the ramen broth and like that taste of the umami, like yeah, that wasn't there before. That's cool.
So interesting.
I don't know what to make of all this though. Did we do a good? Did we do a bad? Like,
I have no idea.
like, how do we rate this? I mean, we don't usually do ratings, but like we could give like thumbs up, thumbs down. Like, I think if I had to put these in order, I think the remix, the new one, I like better than the AVM #1, which I already liked enough that it made me fall in love with American Single Malt. So we're talking high scores across the board. And I think Shadow and Light is just a question of like, I like it about equally to the remix. And I think it's just a question of how much smoke do I want today?
Totally.
And our blend, I think, comes in like below, like it's got interesting flavors, but I don't think I'd be super keen on sipping it a whole lot. So I like it less. I'm not sure if I like it less than AVM #1, but I definitely like it less than Remix and Shadow and Light.
Again, it's one of those weird things where somehow, like, even with excellent components that should go together well, if you put them together, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
At least when we do it.
I mean, yeah, because like we're just there's no science here whatsoever. There was no spreadsheet. I've got however much I have left in the glass of this one and however much I have left in the glass of this one, and I'm gonna put them in an arbitrary order because usually I'm trying to get them into the Whiskey Lodge glass so we can do our sign off. And I actually did it in the reverse order today, so I've transferred it now. Now we're in the Whiskey Lodge glass, so we can do our sign off. Yeah, there's no science here. It's completely arbitrary. Sometimes it turns out decent. It's never better than the sum of its parts, but we do occasionally come out with something interesting. And I'd say,
I'm sure.
I'd say finding Hardywood gingerbread stout in this makes no sense. And there it is. And also that weird seaweed note. That's cool. That's why we do this, right? Like here's our little, when we started this podcast, I've said this before. When we started this podcast, Ian, Spooky Chicken, asked me and Phil, are we going to do bits? Right? Is this going to be a serious podcast? Is this going to be a goofy podcast? Like how serious or how goofy are we going to make it? And I said, I'm up to doing bits. What bits are we going to do? And the first bit that we came up with was we're going to share what we're drinking that's not alcohol and then immediately ignore it. And the fact that we paid no attention to it made it a bit that was not a bit. Nobody noticed we were doing it. It's like, I'm drinking coffee. Okay, great. We're not going to talk about coffee anymore. I'm drinking Gatorade. Great. We're not going to talk about Gatorade anymore. It was a bad bit. But here on the closing of the episode saying we're sitting in front of a blender who carefully and painstakingly blended the whiskey that we just drank and appreciated the hell out of. And then we're going to blend it ourselves into some mess that nobody, that's a good bit. And it's a relief when it turns out to not be horrible.
I
But
will
we've done
say,
okay. And our 50 episode Infinity bottle came out okay.
yeah,
I was terrified. I was like, everything I put in there, I'm like, this one's gonna ruin it. Somehow it came out okay. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's our thing. I feel ownership of that, which is cool. I feel a tiny, tiny bit of ownership of these silly little blends we do at the ends of the episodes. So my message for you, the audience, is play with your whiskey.
yes.
Yeah,
And
have fun.
on that note, I'm really pressed for time because
Yeah.
I've still got to go get the glasses that I left downstairs that I cleaned that I've got to.
Yep. All right. So we're gonna do our quick little sign off here. So first of all, I'd like to thank our patrons. We've had a Patreon for like 2 weeks, and we have 5 subscribers, which is awesome. Thanks to Friedland, Patrick Hagner, Ethan W, Mark, and especially our founder level, Carl Reinsch. Thank you so much for your support of the podcast. And I hope the audience actually heard that while that thing was playing. And without further ado, one last bit of business is, Nora, thank you so much for joining us for, if I'm not mistaken, the 3rd time on our podcast. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. And thank you for giving us so much of your time. It's extremely valuable. And I know that, and I feel bad that we keep you on here so long. But
Well,
it's
thanks for
always a
having
lovely
me.
conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
So
Thank you.
everybody who's still watching, thanks for sticking with us. If you can handle another hour and a half of whiskey content, in 15 minutes, we're going to have Blind Sample Showdown featuring Phil versus, I forget.
Chai Taste Spirits Girl, CHI Chicago.
Yeah,
Taste.
Shy Taste Spirits Girl. Thank you. I was just looking at the spreadsheet of the bracket yesterday, but there's a lot of stuff on there. So not that I'm playing favorites or anything, but Phil is my co-host. So good luck, Phil.
Yeah, I think I'll need it.
And I'm going to let you go prepare for that. And to everyone else, cheers. And until next time, we'll see you in the lodge.
It's lunch.
Good night.
Cheers.